I still have trouble saying this out loud without shaking my head because if someone told me this story instead of me living it, I'd probably laugh and say there's no way it happened like that. But it did. It started with a $7 HOA fine and ended with my front door splintered a bullet hole in the frame and my son being handcuffed on our porch after defending his family. Yeah, that happened. And the scariest part isn't the break-in or the gunshot. It's how easily it all could have gone the other way if we just kept our heads down and paid up like everyone else. I live in one of those neighborhoods that looks peaceful on the outside. You know the kind. Clean sidewalks, trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes. The illusion that order equals safety. We moved there because it was quiet, boring even. That was the selling point. We wanted boring. What we didn't realize was that boring can turn predatory real fast when the wrong person gets a little authority and way too much free time. The first fine showed up on my windshield early one morning, neon orange tucked under the wiper blade like an accusation. $7. The reason our trash cans were visible from the street. Same spot they'd been in for over a decade minding their own business. I laughed at it at first, standing there in the driveway like an idiot, rain soaking my shoes, thinking this was just another HOA being an HOA. Petty, annoying, but harmless. I brought it inside and waved it at my wife Marissa, joking that our garbage cans had officially joined a criminal gang. She didn't laugh. She took one look at it, then looked at her laptop, then back at me and said, "That's the third one this week. Not for us, for the neighborhood. Garden statues, basketball hoops, curtains being open with an old political sign visible through a window. Stuff so small it almost felt like satire." Our daughter wandered through the kitchen half asleep, grabbed a yogurt, glanced at the paper and casually said, "Oh, you got one too, like it was weather." That's when something shifted in my gut. When teenagers start normalizing nonsense, you know it's been going on longer than you realized. By that afternoon, I was talking to my neighbor Theo across the street. Good guy, keeps to himself. He showed me his fine. $15 for an improperly coiled hose and an oil stain on his driveway from his kid's car years ago. He laughed while showing it to me, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes from knowing you're being messed with and not knowing how to stop it. We both said the same thing out loud, almost in sync. It's not about the money. And once you say that, you can't unsee it. It was about pressure, control, seeing how far someone could push before people folded. That night, Marissa built a spreadsheet. Of course she did. Dates, names, violations, amounts. She reached out quietly to neighbors who weren't exactly fans of the HOA president, Denise Harrow, and filled the sheet with fine after fine, day after day. The totals weren't huge, but the frequency was relentless. A drip, drip, drip that never stopped. She stared at the screen for a long moment and said very calmly, "She's building files." That sentence stuck with me. Because once you see it that way, it stops being annoying and starts being threatening. That was when our son, Ethan, walked into the room. He'd been home from the Army for a few months. 8 years special operations, the kind of service that leaves you quiet, observant, and allergic to nonsense. He picked up the orange slip, read it once, didn't smile, didn't joke, just nodded. "HOA," he said. Then he asked a question I hadn't even considered. "When do these notices show up?" Marissa told him, "Most people found them in the morning. No one ever saw who dropped them off." Ethan nodded again and said, "Then we stop reacting. We start watching. You know that feeling when someone says something simple and suddenly you realize you've been thinking about the problem all wrong. That was it." The next evening, he came home with a trail camera. Small, black, motion-activated night vision. I told him it was overkill. He told me people who move in the dark don't expect to be seen. Marissa loved it. Data timestamps proof. We mounted it in the oak tree across the street aimed right at our mailbox. 2 nights went by with nothing. On the third night at 2:11 a.m., a dark sedan rolled up with its headlights off. Passenger door opened. A guy in a hoodie walked up, glanced toward the tree, and for half a second his face lit up in infrared like he'd just confessed to something. He opened our mailbox and slipped an orange notice inside. Then he did the same to our neighbor's box and got back in the car. Marissa whispered, "That's federal." She was right. Tampering with mailboxes isn't some HOA thing. That's real law. Ethan paused the frame on the guy's face. Young. Early 20s. We recognized him. Landscaping jobs around the area. His uncle was on the HOA board. Suddenly the puzzle pieces weren't just fitting, they were snapping together. Ethan zoomed in on the car, adjusted contrast like he'd done it 100 times before, and pulled a license plate. When we traced it, it came back to Greg Voss, HOA treasurer Denise's right hand. That was the moment my stomach went cold, because this wasn't just her being power-hungry, this was organized. The next day, Ethan and I drove out to Greg's neighborhood and sat down the street like two guys in a bad detective movie sipping lukewarm coffee and feeling ridiculous. Then Greg opened his garage and Ethan stiffened. Inside, stacked neatly on a shelf, were navy polo shirts embroidered with CR Security, Cypress Ridge Security. A fake badge hung on a lanyard, and right there on the pegboard, like it belonged, was a postal arrow key. The master key mail carriers use to open cluster mailboxes, highly illegal for a civilian to have. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He just said, "That's a postal arrow key." Then he pointed out folders on a workbench, names on the tabs. One of them was ours. When we got home and told Marissa, she went quiet. Then she said, if they're building files, there's an end game. She said one word that made everything heavier: lien. I laughed at first. It sounded insane. A lien over a few petty fines, but she explained how it works. Inflate the amounts with fake fees, file paperwork, forged signatures. On paper, it looks real enough to ruin someone's life. The next morning, she went to the county records office. I stayed home trying to fix a faucet with shaking hands. When she came back, she laid a packet on the table and said, "We have one. $9,200. Built on $7 fines. And on the last page, my name forged." That was the moment it stopped being about trash cans and started being about our house, our safety, our future. We checked a few neighbors. They had liens too, bigger ones. This wasn't an HOA, it was a racket, a foreclosure factory dressed up as community rules. 2 nights later, the storm came in hard. Wind howling, rain pounding. None of us slept. We were sitting in the living room when we heard a sharp pop, then the sound of glass tinkling. I looked through the blinds and saw 2 figures on our porch in rain gear. One had a crowbar. Marissa was already on the phone with 911, calm and precise. Then the crowbar hit the door. The frame groaned. The second guy raised his arm and fired. The sound inside the house was deafening. The bullet punched into the wood near the lock. Our daughter started crying. And in the middle of that chaos, Ethan moved like he'd trained for this his whole life. Calm, focused, not angry, focused. The door finally gave. 2 men stepped into our foyer. Under one jacket, I saw the CR Security polo. Fake authority, fake legitimacy. Ethan's voice cut through the noise, steady and clear. "Get out of my house." He flicked on his tactical light, blinding the first guy. The crowbar dropped. The second man hesitated with his pistol half raised. Ethan didn't advance, didn't yell, just said, "Drop it." The sirens were still far away. The pistol hit the mat. The men backed out into the rain and ran. And then the worst twist of the night happened. A neighbor shouted, "He's got a gun." Sheriff's cruisers arrived, fast lights everywhere. Ethan did everything right. He lowered his rifle, set it down, removed the magazine, cleared the chamber, hands up. He announced who he was. Didn't matter. They cuffed him on our porch. Watching my son, who had just protected his family, get led to a cruiser like a criminal was the lowest moment of my life. I can still feel it in my chest. The next day, a detective came to our house. At first, he listened politely, like this was just another messy domestic call. Then Marissa brought out her binder, the spreadsheet, the mailbox footage, the license plate, the garage inventory, the fake uniforms, the arrow key, the forged lien. His expression changed. "This is bigger than an HOA dispute," he said. Ethan was released later that day after body cam footage showed he complied completely. Then we met at the sheriff's office with a postal inspector. He watched the mailbox video, once asked about the key, and said, "This is ours." That afternoon, they raided Greg's house. They found everything. He folded fast and named Denise. They decided to arrest her at the HOA meeting, publicly. The clubhouse was packed. Denise stood at the podium, smiling, confident. Marissa